West Boylston Cadet Girl Scout Troop has been monitoring the perceptions of females in all forms of media as part of a Journey Award program. We have invited 3 of our town leaders to join us for a discussion on women in town leadership positions. We hope to inform and influence young women and girls on occupational choices they may not have otherwise considered. We will pose a selection of questions on jobs, schooling, challenges, and interests to each of our guests.
Joining us today are Library Director Anna Shaw. Anna Shaw is the director of the Beeman Memorial Public Library. She has worked as a librarian in West Boylston for 7 years. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy with a dual minor in History and Religious Studies from the University of Delaware and earned her master's degree in Library Science from Simmons College in Boston. School Superintendent Elizabeth Sharper. Elizabeth Sharper has been an educator since 1985, serving in many schools in Massachusetts as a special education teacher, a math teacher, and a school administrator. On July 1st, she will begin her 8th year as superintendent of the West Boylston Public Schools. Town Administrator Anita Shipers. Anita Shipers is the town administrator for West Boylston. Mrs. Shipers is responsible for the oversight and control of all of the town departments and town services except for our schools and library. She has been in the position for 2 years, but has served in this role for other communities since 1998. Thank you for all your time with us today.
What does your current job entail?
Who would like to go first? Will this pick us up if we leave the microphone on the table? Okay. I'll be glad to jump in.
Sure.
Okay. So as town administrator, my job basically is to make sure that all of the town departments run smoothly to provide town services. So whether it's police services, fire or ambulance services, senior center services, town clerk, elections, etc. I'm kind of responsible to work with all those different department heads to make sure that all of those things happen smoothly on a daily basis. So that's a basic summary.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm in charge of running the library, making sure that everything goes smoothly inside and outside the building, and resolving any conflicts that may arise with technology or anything else.
And I work with the schools, so my job entails making sure that everybody at the schools has everything that they need to do their jobs the best that they can do. One thing you might not know about my job is that only a few people report directly to me. You might think I'm, in charge of all the teachers or everybody else. Really, the only people who report directly to me are a business manager, a special education director, my secretarial assistant, and the 2 principals. And everybody else reports to one of those people that report to me. The biggest part of my job is making sure that we have a good budget and that we use it for the right things. Another very important aspect of my job is making sure that every person who works for us has the right credentials to be able to do the job that we hire them for. So that means that any of you who go to Major Edwards School or the middle high school, that every teacher that you have has the right credentials to teach you, and every special person that you work with, like a speech therapist or an occupational therapist, has the right credentials for that work.
What does a typical day look like?
You want to go?
Okay, I'll go first. So in a typical day, there isn't really a typical day in the library because anything can happen. But usually I come in the mornings and I'll check my email, and check my to-do list to make sure that I'm on track for the day. I make sure that I know when all my meetings are and all the appointments I have for the day so that I can plan accordingly. And then I make sure that I have time to do all the things that I need to do. But then sometimes surprises happen and I have to improvise and change my plans based on what's happening at that moment. So for instance, we had some trouble with our intranet, and that became the most important thing that I had to do, because most of the librarians can't do what they need to do if we don't have internet, and a lot of our patrons who come in want to use the internet on our computers, and if there's no internet available, then everyone's unhappy, and I'm the one who has to fix it.
So, every one of my days has some of this variety of things. Some walking around the schools, just checking in with people, saying hi, making sure people are good and the climate seems right. There are always a lot of emails to answer, a lot of correspondence. Usually I have some appointments with people during the day, whether those are teachers who need something from me or a parent who needs something. I have a rule that is a good one. It's served me well for the time that I've been here. And I tell everybody that if you call me, I will answer your call or your email within 24 hours, but usually within just a few hours. So I try to respond immediately to things that come to my attention. I found that that's been a good practice for me, and I do feel like it works very well. People like to be responded to quickly. So sometimes there are things in school that are, fun events that I get to go to and see. And that happens more often than you might think. Sometimes teachers will ask me to come to their classrooms. Did any of you have Mrs. Campbell for a first grade teacher? So kids in her class, they make those big scrolls of all the numbers that they keep. So I end up there a lot watching the kids unroll their scroll like all the way down the hallway because they've written 10,000 numbers. So I get to have lots of celebrations with children like that. And that's pretty much it. I like to hang around in the cafeteria sometimes just to see how that's going and to taste lunch. Stuff like that. It's a nice job.
So my day starts at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and if I'm lucky, it ends late afternoon. And my day is a mix of meetings with different people, whether it's residents who have issues or complaints or need some help with something, or it might be employees, or it might be some of my department heads like the fire chief or the town accountant, who we have to work on projects or issues. But then a big part of my day is the fact that I also have to go to night meetings, because in our town government, our local government, we rely on a lot of people who volunteer their time to be town officials. So it's the planning board, it's the conservation commission, it's the town-wide planning committee. And, I have to be there at their meetings to help them work through their issues. So, could be 2 or 3 nights a week I'm at those meetings as well. So there's some days that I have very long days, and then there's other times when I have what I call a normal day, when I get to go home for dinner.
What other jobs have you had?
I'll go first. We're going to do that, right?
Sure.
So I've been an educator all my life. Well, let me go back. I probably started working when I was like 16 years old. I worked in a supermarket, Ian Doley Supermarket in Worcester, forever. I worked there all through college until I was 22 years old. During that time, I also worked at a camp with handicapped children, and that's really what led to my desire to want to be a teacher. What else have I done in my life? I was a travel agent, of all things. While I was a teacher, I was a travel agent too, because teachers, I worked in the city of Worcester. I got out kind of early, so I had extra time during the day, and I would go and work as a travel agent. But most of my career has been a teacher, and I've taught high school, elementary school. I taught at a college or a couple classes at colleges here and there, but mostly all teaching. That's been a good job for me.
Okay. I'm next. Okay, so this job that I have right now is a career change for me. I started out as a nurse, and I was a nurse for a few years, and quickly decided that that was not the right job for me. So when I was a young mother and had my children, I became an elected official in the town that I lived in, which is the town of Bolton, and grew to love being involved in local government. And over time, through experience and training and schooling, I have taken on this job as a career of town administration. So it's somewhat of a difference, going from nursing to town administration. But I have to say that I love this job. It's a lot of fun. Every day is different, and I never know what I'm going to find coming through my door. So
I started off babysitting. I did that for a long time and I loved it. Then I got my first real job was in retail. I worked at a children's clothing store and I really, really liked that. And then when I was in college, I worked at a bookstore and I was also waitressing, which was very difficult. And then after college, I worked as an assistant at a law firm because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer when I grew up. And then I decided that I wanted to be a librarian. That changed everything.
What job did you want to do when you were younger?
Okay, my turn to
It's you
start this
again.
time. When I was younger, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a landscape architect. I love working in gardens, designing gardens, building stone walls, putting down terraces and pavements and all kinds of things. So that was what I loved to do. I was very disappointed when the guidance counselor told me it probably wasn't a good career choice.
I wanted to be lots of different things. I started off wanting to be a teacher when I grew up. My mom was a teacher, and I thought that was just the coolest job. And then I got interested in healthcare when I was a little bit older because my dad is in healthcare, and I thought that was really cool as well. And then when I was a little bit older, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. So I tried that out, sort of, by working in a law firm.
I can tell you that the first thing I ever remember saying I wanted to be, I said I wanted to be because I had just read a book about traveling to Mars. I said I wanted to be an astronaut. And I think that would scare me to death, so I don't know what I was thinking. But I also remember that there was a period of time when I wanted to be a nurse, speaking of nursing. And my mother thought that it would be a good idea if I volunteered to be a candy striper. They had those in hospitals at the time, and so I did. And I worked as a candy striper at St. Vincent's Hospital in Worcester when I was in 7th grade, your age. And it was horrible. I didn't like the smell of the hospital. I delivered flowers to people, and they made me sneeze, and I delivered mail. There were a lot of things that candy stripers did then that they would never be able to do now. One of those was we would deliver mail to the residents, and I went into one room, and there was a man who was blind. He asked me if I would read the letter to him that he received, and it was a letter telling him that his brother had died. And I thought, this is too much for me. I'm 12. And then shortly after that, I was assigned to feed somebody who didn't have the use of his arms, and he wanted blue cheese dressing on his salad, and I squeezed the thing and it went all over my uniform. And so forever while I did that job, I had this blue cheese stain of, like, the oil from the blue cheese dressing. So that ended my nursing desires. But underneath it all, I always had going the teacher thing. And I don't know whether any of you have like an active imagination, but I had a very active imagination, and I used to set up my dolls in like a classroom and make a class list and give them grades. So I think that was always with me too. I joke, I say I think I had the smallest school in Massachusetts for a while. And I still have kind